Welcome to the Clear Ground Show. I'm your host, Dr. G, with a PhD. And as usual, we've got quite a bit of news for you guys today. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone for subscribing. We broke the 20 mark, which is awesome. Next top 50, and we'll keep on going from there. So on the docket for today, the Surgeon General releases a very rare advisory report, and it is not good. We'll go over that and what it might mean. Then we'll look a little bit into Fauci, and he has a new video, and it seems like every day this guy gets more and more tyrannical. We'll hear what he has to say. From there, we'll go over how a judge blocks de Blasio's latest mandate. We'll then hear what the WHO has to say about Omicron. We'll talk about UK's Plan B and Boris Johnson on a national conversation. Italy has some interesting stories coming out of there and new mandates and lockdowns. The Finland Prime Minister is out clubbing, which is crazy, and she was exposed to COVID, which is a big no-no over there. We'll take a brief look at an adipose tissue study with COVID-19 that might explain why so many obese people were in the hospital getting severely sick from COVID. So all that and much more, let's dive on in. We're going to open up with some pretty sad news today, and this is a Surgeon General public advisory. Now, this story is coming out of the LA Times, but in the description, I'll post a link to the direct public advisory released by the Surgeon General. So for starters, the symptoms of depression and anxiety have doubled during the pandemic, with 25% of youth experiencing depressive symptoms and 20% experiencing anxiety symptoms, according to the 53-page advisory. In early 2021, emergency department visits in the United States for suspected suicide attempts were 51% higher, a staggering 51% higher for adolescent girls and 4% higher for adolescent boys compared to the same time period in early 2019. The advisory calls for a broad-based and rapid response from government, social media, companies, community groups, schools, teachers, parents, and even students, and listed resources available to them. Now I'm quoting from a student whose name is Jesus. For most of my classes, it's just a name in a box. No microphones being turned on, no cameras, no chat. Unless the teacher says, say yes if you're still here, it was just a ghost town, kind of. A lot of people still feel like everything is virtual, like they act as if we can't see or hear what they say. A lot of students have been less motivated to come to school, miss school more. I'm noticing a lot more students start to leave class and take long bathroom breaks. And finally, we get a brief description of Murthy in the article. He's on his second tour of duty. He served as Surgeon General from 2014 to 2017, appointed by President Obama. The latest advisory is his second during the Biden administration. His first flagged the, quote, urgent threat, end quote, of medical misinformation, calling on tech and social media companies to operate more responsibly. So for starters, when lockdowns first started and everybody was gung-ho about it, this was, of course, one of the factors we all knew was going to happen. We knew that children were going to be severely impacted by the inability to go to school and behave like normal kids. At the time, several leaders and people in communities were okay with this. This was a sacrifice they were willing to make in order to sort of see if we could mend the curve of COVID. I don't think many of them envisioned that we'd be going this far out, and yet they've continued to go along with it. So for example, let's take a look at this August 13th article from Oregon. From U.S. News, new Oregon law suspends graduation testing requirement. A new Oregon law that suspends the requirement for a basic skills test in math, reading, and writing to graduate high school is being praised by advocates as a way to rethink education standards and sharply criticized by others as a misguided effort that will hurt children's learning in the long run. The governor signed the bill in July without much attention, and the measure temporarily eliminates essential skills tests through the 2022-2023 school year. This is a disaster zone. So not only are we keeping kids in Zoom calls if they're not in the classroom, now they have no standards, no achievements, they can't be proud of their work. Everyone's just the same. This is a terrible idea, and these sorts of things are leading to this spike, in my opinion. Furthermore, let's look at how children are being treated in this pandemic that are in school. So looking at this video, these are kindergartners in Oregon eating their lunch isolated on buckets. So the buckets are the tables, and they can't talk and they're masked up. This is no way to be a kid. Now, both of those examples are out of Oregon, but this trend is being seen across the country. America needs to give kids back their childhoods, and we need to stop doing these COVID policies for children, especially when, remember, none of this is from COVID. COVID itself is not impacting statistically these kids. It's from the policies that people are putting in place for COVID. So with all due respect to the Surgeon General, this is an extremely troubling advisory, but they'd be best to stay out of it. I think they've done enough damage to these children with these policies as is. It's time to let the kids be kids again and to get government out of these schools right now. Now on to Fauci and vaccines.
Really have to get people vaccinated. I mean, I understand, and we all understand, how people do not like to be told what to do. They want to make their own choice and their own free will. I get that, and I respect that. But these are unusual times, and you can't think only of yourself and your own personal opinion, but you've got to think about your communal responsibility to get yourself and your family, and indirectly then the community, protected. So I would prefer, and we all would prefer, that people would be voluntarily getting vaccinated. But if they're not going to do that, sometimes you've got to do things that are unpopular, but that clearly supersede individual choices and are directed predominantly at the communal good. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about
I get you want that stupid old individual choice. And look, we wish you would just choose to get the vaccine. But since you're not getting it, I guess we have to do the mandates. And again, I respect individual choice. Just not this time or any other time that I want to make things go the way that I want them. What an absolute clown. And it seems like every day he finds all this time to go on ABC and MSNBC and give some 30-minute interview. And at some point in the interview, he always seems to move the ratchet a little bit further, to really tighten that bolt and just make it seem a little more authoritarian. This guy is obsessed. He's obsessed with compliance. I would really like it if he would just give us a metric for a way out. Let us know what number in his mind we have to reach to be done with this. Not that it really matters, because more than half the country, me included, is done with this, but it'd be nice to hear him say what his metric for a win is. Speaking of guys that don't know how to win, let's take a look at what Bill de Blasio has to say.
Here in New York City, we were the epicenter of the COVID crisis. We lost so many people in this neighborhood and neighborhoods all over the city. We didn't have PPE, we didn't have ventilators, we were alone. And then we started to fight back, and vaccines came, and we focused on vaccination. It made all the difference. We're now the safest place in this country, but we gotta go even farther. Omicron's here, winter's coming, we gotta go even farther. Today in New York City, we announced a mandate. All private sector employers must have their employees vaccinated by December 27th. This is what's gonna keep us safe. This is the kind of thing we need to do now, not just here, but everywhere, so we can leave COVID behind once and for all.
What an unlikable, ghastly character he is. I'm not a New York resident, but if I was, man, I'd be so happy that he was finally out of there, finally going to be out of there come next year. That is some great news. But honestly, does anyone here believe what he's saying? He's saying, we'll just do this one last measure and COVID will be gone forever. Really? After all the other measures, you think this is the one that's going to get COVID out of here? What a joke. What a disaster zone. But more importantly, in this coming out of Newsweek, the New York City vaccine mandate was blocked by a judge in a blow to Bill de Blasio. You gotta love it. It wasn't even 2 days out there and it's already been blocked. All right, let's read this story. So Mayor Bill de Blasio's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for New York City employees, including the NYPD, has been blocked by a Manhattan court. On Tuesday, Judge Frank P. Nervo in the Supreme Court of New York gave notice that the mandate was suspended pending a hearing scheduled for December 14th. Patricia Finn is the attorney who launched a legal challenge against the mayor's mandate. She regularly espouses anti-vaccination views on her social media accounts. Gee, I wonder if Newsweek is a fan of hers or not. I also wonder if they're adopting the new Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition for these anti-vaccine views, or if they have their own. So to date, New York has administered more than 12.5 million vaccinations, with 89% of adults having had at least one dose. More than 125,000 children ages 5 to 11 have also had at least one dose. So the article ends by going over the mayor's new major expansion to the Key to NYC program. So we're going to highlight some of those for you. As part of the program, New Yorkers 18 or older are required to show identification and proof of vaccination to partake in indoor activities. The expansion obliges children ages 5 to 11 to provide proof of vaccination to enter indoor dining, fitness, entertainment, and performance venues. Those changes are due to come into effect on December 14th. This age group, so 5 to 11, will also be required to get vaccinated to participate in, quote, high-risk extracurricular activities, including sports, orchestra, and dance. That is incredible. From December 27th, New Yorkers aged 12 and older will be required to show proof of 2 vaccine doses instead of 1, except for those who have received the J&J single-shot vaccine. But remember, just this one next step, this is going to be it. We can put COVID behind us right after we do this next one little thing. Give me a break. So if the WHO has anything to say about it, this thing is long from over. But it's the WHO, so who really cares? Let's see what they have to say, though, just to give them their due. First, we'll hear from Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who is the director of the WHO.
The Omicron variant has now been reported in 57 countries, and we expect that number to continue growing. Certain features of Omicron, including its global spread and large number of mutations, suggest it could have a major impact on the course of the pandemic.
And now we'll hear from Dr. Mike Ryan, who is the Executive Director of Health Emergencies of the Health Emergency Program for the WHO.
And we've been saying this going back months now, but long before we had Omicron, we were concerned about the Delta wave and what it was doing and what we weren't doing to stop that. Omicron represents another level. It's another dimension. It's another scale of response that we may need, and we weren't doing particularly well.
And let's not forget that the WHO said, and I'm quoting that from the BBC, don't panic about Omicron variant. So, well, is what it is. That's pretty much all the patience I have for the WHO. I don't think that they've really done that good of a job with COVID in general, so I'm not going to give them that much time of day. But now let's go to a country that I do care about, and this is the UK. So first, before the conversation video, I'm going to start with an article from the New York Times discussing the whole Plan B situation in the UK, and the title of the article is, "With Johnson under fire, Britain introduces tougher COVID measures." So the article opens up with Prime Minister Boris Johnson of Britain on Wednesday announcing major new restrictions to curb the fast-spreading Omicron variant, reversing course on a long-held policy. So under the government's new guidance, known as Plan B, people in England will be urged to work from home if possible starting next week. They will also be required to wear face masks in cinemas, theaters, and most other indoor places, and to show a pass proving their vaccinated status to be allowed into nightclubs and large venues like sports stadiums. He also said that negative tests would be included on vaccine passes as an alternative to proof of vaccination. Quoting now from the Prime Minister, "It's become increasingly clear that Omicron is growing much faster than the previous Delta variant and is spreading rapidly throughout the world. We need to go further and faster still." The article continues, "Unless its spread is slowed, Omicron could result in between 1,000 and 2,000 hospitalizations a day, according to recently published minutes from a meeting of the Government Scientific Advisory Committee, SAGE. Mr. Johnson also hinted that he was thinking about mandatory vaccination, saying there should be a national conversation about the issues. We'll get to that video in a moment. Some public health experts welcomed Mr. Johnson's tougher measures, even if some said they were overdue. But they said the government's credibility gap caused by the furor over the office party would hamper its efforts to encourage compliance in the public. This is referring to an office party that his administration had, which was a total disaster recently. Finally, Devi Sridhar said, "There's no trust in leadership right now, which is just a major blow during a pandemic when trust is vital." She followed that up by saying that there was a fuzzier line between what's true and what's false, and that, again, is a death blow to public health messaging and response. So let's hear what Boris Johnson has to say to the UK about this national conversation on vaccination.
I do think that we're going to have a conversation about ways in which we deal with this pandemic, because I want to be absolutely clear with you. I don't believe we can keep going indefinitely with non-pharmaceutical interventions. I mean restrictions on people's way of life, where just because a substantial proportion of the population still sadly has not got vaccinated. And I think we're going to need to have a national conversation about the way forward and the other things that we can do to protect those who are hard to reach, who haven't got.
Now, there's a little hint of Fauci in his voice. I don't know if you guys heard that. But I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think the people of the UK are pretty much done with this. I think a lot of their parliament is going to say no as well. And it's unfortunate in one sense, because like that one expert was saying, when you lose trust, you lose a lot. And it may be the case, one of these variants many months down the road or even next month, it could be the case that a really bad actor comes on board. But we've been assaulted audibly so much by these governments that people are tired of it, and they're not going to listen to whatever they have to say, and that's the cost. That's the cost when you keep crying wolf. When the wolf actually comes, it's not going to be good. And who knows, maybe this wolf will never come, but I don't think this is going to be popular in the UK, and I don't think it's going to fly with Boris Johnson. Now let's swing over to Europe's boot, Italy, and see what they're doing. So this is coming from the AP on December 6th. Unvaccinated Italians face new restrictions as the holidays near. Italy is making life more uncomfortable for unvaccinated people this holiday season, excluding them from indoor restaurants, theaters, and museums starting Monday to reduce the spread of coronavirus and encourage vaccine skeptics to get their shots. The Italian police have been empowered to check whether diners in restaurants or bars have a super green health pass certifying that they are either vaccinated or have recently recovered from the virus. What's also amazing is the authorities also imposed a requirement that at least a basic health pass, which can be obtained with a negative test, must be used to get on local transport and to check into hotels. So there's a super health pass and a basic health pass. With all these in place, a 50-year-old Roman became the first to receive a €400 fine, after getting off the bus at the northern Flaminio station without the basic health pass, said the deputy chief of Rome's municipal police force. So I don't know if you guys remember, just a couple of days ago we talked about Germany and how they were saying, look, if we were more like Italy, we wouldn't be doing all the things we're doing. Well, look at Italy now. But there's another even larger story, in my opinion, coming out of Italy, where this guy, a dentist, tried to use a fake silicone arm to get a vaccine. There's a follow-up on that story. We're going to read it right now. This also coming from the AP News. Italy dentist with fake silicone arm gets vaccine for real. So Dr. Guido Russo faces possible criminal fraud charges for having worn an arm made out of silicone when he first showed up at a vaccine hub in the northern city of Biella. Italy has required doctors and nurses to be vaccinated since earlier this year. Rousseau insisted during a Wednesday night appearance on Italian talk show LA7 that he wasn't trying to defraud the government or to dupe anyone because the arm was obviously not real. He said he wanted to make a personal protest against vaccine mandates. Now here's the kind of creepy part. Now he presents the fake arm for a COVID-19 vaccine. Now he says he's gotten the shot, and now that he's gotten the shot, he says this, quote, "The vaccine is the best weapon we have against this terrible disease," end quote. It could be he really believes that, although I wouldn't expect those words to come out of a guy that's protesting against the vaccine mandates. Although maybe those two aren't totally separate ideas. You can be vaccinated and be against the vaccine mandates. That's plausible and probable. I think many people are like that. But I don't think he would say these things just by himself. My guess is that it was either that or a little bit of jail time. And I wouldn't want jail time, and I don't think he did either. So he said, hey, this is the best thing we got. Everyone go do it. I'm the fake arm guy, and we're done here. Now let's go to Finland and check out what that prime minister did the other day. This is coming from the BBC. Sanna Marin, Finland's prime minister, sorry for clubbing after COVID contact. So Prime Minister Marin went on a night out in Helsinki on Saturday, hours after a foreign minister had tested positive. The Prime Minister, who is 36, said the text message that advised her to avoid social contact was sent to her work phone, which she had left at home. So under Finland's COVID guidelines, anyone who is double jabbed does not need to isolate if they come into contact with a positive case. Now, the Siska magazine said it spoke to witnesses who saw her dancing at the Butcher's Club where she stayed until 4 a.m. Now, I don't really care about the COVID thing from this story. What really amazes me is that Finland's prime minister is out clubbing until 4 a.m. What a prime minister. She's also 36 years old. The world can in fact be your oyster if your oyster is being a prime minister at 36 and going clubbing until 4 a.m. Now I'm briefly going to go over some highlights from a scientific publication. The title of that publication is "The SARS CoV-2 Infects Human Adipose Tissue and Elicits an Inflammatory Response Consistent with Severe COVID-19." Now that paper is linked in the description below. It's a pretty technical, heavy paper. It's kind of long. I would highly recommend it to anyone that is interested in this topic, but here are some of the highlights. So, quoting from the paper, "In this report, we demonstrate that human adipose tissue from multiple depots is permissive to SARS-CoV-2 infection, and that infection elicits an inflammatory response, including the secretion of known inflammatory mediators of severe COVID-19. We identified 2 cellular targets of SARS-CoV-2 infection in adipose tissue, mature adipocytes and adipose tissue macrophages. Adipose tissue macrophage infection is largely restricted to a highly inflammatory subpopulation of macrophages present at baseline that is further activated in response to SARS-CoV-2 infection. Pre-adipocytes, while not infected, adopt a pro-inflammatory phenotype. So what does that mean basically? That means that they found SARS CoV-2 in fat cells. And why is this important? Well, of course, we've discussed this many times, but in several instances, more than 75% of ICU cases were filled with obese people for COVID-19. The paper highlights several mechanisms that could underlie the association, so I'm going to list them off for you guys. They have impaired respiratory mechanisms that can result from a heavy chest wall, airway resistance, and/or presence of obstructive sleep apnea. The metabolic milieu in obesity, particularly among individuals with insulin resistant, is characterized by systemic inflammation and hypercoagulability, and could thus stimulate a more robust inflammatory response to SARS CoV-2. So they're focusing a lot on inflammation here, and if you guys remember, a while ago, back in August or September, I was breaking down a paper that had to do with the cytokine storm caused by COVID-19. And basically what that means is that there's a huge inflammation or inflammatory response in your lungs caused by COVID-19, and that's what gets people super sick, and the need for intubation and all that comes from this huge inflammation storm. So what they're discovering here is that SARS-CoV-2 inside of fat cells can induce a similar response. So there's a bunch in this study. The last thing I'm going to read to you guys is where they found SARS-CoV-2 and where they expected it. So they found SARS-CoV-2 was the highest concentration in the lung. And then interestingly, it was followed right after that in adipose tissue. So that means in fat tissue was the next highest concentration of SARS-CoV-2 detection. That was followed by the heart and then the kidney. If you guys want a longer breakdown of that paper, I can do one next week. Just let me know in the comments. But with that, that's going to be it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. We got our numbers up to 20 again, which is awesome. Please enjoy this video. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys again on Monday.